The Right Honorable Sir Dennis Byron, former President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Chief Justice Roxanne George, Senior Counsel, Justices of the Supreme Court of Judicature, Justice Holder, Reynolds, Barlow, Curtius, Ramlal, and retired Justice Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan, Clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Sherdal Isaacs, Registrar of Deeds, Mrs. Enid Baksh, Registrar of the Supreme Court, Ms. Lovell, Registrar of Lands, Ms. Robertson, members of the Inner Bar, members of the Outer Bar, clients and friends of the firm, colleagues at HFS, members of the media, good evening. It is no easy task to assume the mic after the former president of the Caribbean Court of Justice. And it is equally no easy task to assume the mic after the two preeminent partners of the firm, Mr. Nigel Hughes and Mr. Andrew Pollard, Senior Counsel. But it is indeed my honor this evening to thank you all for attending with us and for joining us in celebrating the 50 years of Hughes, Fields and Stoby. Hughes, Fields and Stoby also wishes to express its gratitude to Vanda, the kind group who were able to put this all together for us this evening. You might not recognize it, but you're presently seated in what is a parking lot covered in sand, and you can't see it. We'd also like to thank Maggie's, who catered this event. We'd like to thank Pangru for attending and gracing us with their music. And of course, I would be remiss to not thank the Right Honorable Sir Dennis Byron for attending this evening, for gracing us with his presence, and for charging the firm for the next 50 years. And for also recognizing a few things that I myself recognized upon joining HFS. One, HFS is a dynamic firm. HFS prides itself on technology. HFS is not just a family firm. They've extended the wings of the firm to several of us who might not be legacies in the law, but certainly benefit from the legacy of Clarence Hughes, Senior Counsel, and now Nigel Hughes and Andrew Pollard, Senior Counsel. Now, I have been asked to move a vote of thanks, but it would be remiss of me to not also extend deep gratitude on my own behalf and on behalf of all the staff at Hughes, Fields and Stoby, to Nigel Hughes and to Andrew Pollard, Senior Counsel, for graciously leading the firm and continuing to be great sources of advice and mentorship to each of us. And as I leave the mic, I'll leave you with this very brief note. I was a student at Queen's College, and at the age of 16, I was the head of the QC debating team. Now, QC was debating bishops, and for anybody aware, QC and bishops have a very tight rivalry, if you will. Now, Hughes, Fields and Stoby was actually the sponsor for the JOFAN's debating competition at that time. And there was a huge fuss in the room that I really did not understand. You see, there were a group of teachers and a group of organizers, and everyone was fussing because Nigel Hughes was coming. Now, I had absolutely no idea who this Nigel Hughes was, but clearly for people to be jumping over themselves, he must have meant something at the time. So I looked on to see who is this Nigel Hughes. And he came in rushing, I assume from somewhere, court perhaps, because I did not know who he was. Nigel assumed the mic and charged us ahead of that debate to be our best, to put our best foot forward and to think of what we wanted to be in the future. But I didn't pay much attention to that. I was more concerned with the fact that this man spoke to us for 15 minutes with not a single note, without missing a single word, with perfect enunciation, and he managed to enrapture a group of teenagers, which I really hadn't seen before. So I went home that day and I told my dad, who's a practicing doctor, that I think I'm going to be a lawyer. I told Nigel this story about 4 years ago and he refused to believe me. But that was one of the moments that defined my pursuit into studying law and now ultimately to joining HFS and to being made a partner at the firm. I do not take lightly the opportunities given to us here at HFS, and I charge the younger generation of HFS to take full advantage of the breadth of expertise that we have available to us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and do have a very pleasant rest of the evening.